So this is Am I on Track? And we just want to make sure that you have all the information you need about the TSI initiative and also academic advising for your students who are transitioning into college. So here's your first question. TSI stands for Totally Stupendous Information, Texas Secondary Institution, Truthfully Solid Individual, or Texas Success Initiative? D. Very good. You all get an A. Okay. And we're stuck. There it is. Okay, so what is the Texas Success Initiative? And probably there's a number of you who could teach this, but we're going to go over it. There may be a few things that are a bit different. Lately, it seems like we only find out about changes to TSI accidentally. So the communication is not as great as we would like for it to be between the coordinating board and all of the institutions, but they have to deal with a lot of institutions. So the first piece of the Texas Success Initiative is assessment. All students have to be assessed for college readiness in reading, math, and writing by state-approved test or be completely exempt. If they are not completely exempt, they must test. And that's where we run into the most problems with students is they are partially exempt based on their tax, but not completely exempt. So these are the state-approved tests: Accuplacer, THEA, Compass, and Asset. We administer THEA and Accuplacer, but we will accept all four of the tests. And appropriate advising is required for all students in need of developmental education. That's the second piece of the legislation. And TSI is legislation from the state, as I know you guys are very comfortable dealing with the lovely things from the state. Okay, so here's your second question. Taxes to high school as blank is to college. Accuplacer, Asset, THEA, or all of the above? All of the answers are D. We should mix it up a little, huh? That's right. And it's not exactly correct, but it sort of is correct because tax obviously is taken throughout their career. Accuplacer, Asset, and THEA have to be taken before a student can enroll in college level courses, any college level courses. Okay, I told you there are some exemptions. There are exemptions for tax, and when students come in, I ask them if they have tested, if I don't see testing in the system, and they often will tell me, well, I'm commended, so I don't have to test. And I don't even know what commended is. What is the score to be commended on tax? Okay. So obviously that student is going to be exempt, but if we don't have those scores in the system, we don't know that. So until they're in the system, we can only advise them into developmental coursework. So they can be exempt based on tax, 2,200 on math, and a 2,200 on the English language arts with a writing subscore of 3. And it's the subscore of 3 that gets us every time. Because if it's not on the transcript or it's on the transcript and we haven't entered it, we can't exempt the student until we see that. So encourage your students to make sure that that all of that information is in the system so that we can do what we need to do. They can also be partially exempt, and this is what gets a lot of students because most of them are partially exempt in reading and writing, and then they make a 2198 on the math, so they're not completely exempt. If they're not completely exempt, again, they have to test. The coordinating board tells us this is what we have to do. There are some pieces, obviously, of TSI that are institutional and some pieces that are legislated. And this is one of the pieces, unfortunately, that's legislated.
Can you explain what happens when they don't test?
If they have not tested and are not completely exempt, all we can advise them into is developmental coursework. So all they can enroll in is 4 classes. And if they're partially exempt in math, then all they can enroll in is English 1310 and English 1320. And if they're partially exempt in reading and writing, all they can enroll in is Math 1300 or 1334 based on what their ACT score is. We're allowed to clear students based on other testing. ACT is not a state-approved test, but we can clear students based on ACT if they've tested. And it's very frustrating when we have a student who is not completely exempt, but is partially exempt based on tax, and then has an ACT score that we know will clear them, and we have to look them in the eye and say, you gotta go test. It doesn't matter what you make on the test, you can sign your name and walk away, and we're gonna put you in college level coursework. But the coordinating board says they have to test. I know how stupid that is, but they don't care.
Can I add something to
Sure.
Give me the mic for a second.
One thing that we also see that happens is our departments may have some different requirements than are the state requirements. So if a student,
Is that not in here?
no, I don't think so. If a student tests below an ACT of 20, then they all have to go into either elementary algebra or intermediate algebra. See, so sometimes it's helpful for them to take the THEA or one of the other tests in order to be sure that they get in the proper level for their math course. That's the primary one. Also, if students were in calculus or pre-calculus in high school, but they didn't get a high enough ACT score, they're still going to have to go based on their ACT score or on the THEA score or Accuplacer score. Okay? So it's important that students have a good understanding that just because they're exempt doesn't mean they have to. A lot of times they say, but I'm exempt, I don't need to test. There's other reasons for them to test. Okay? Any questions on that?
And that's also, the English department does recognize I don't know how to work this. Okay, here we go. Oh, that won't work. The English department recognizes the tax exemption, but the math department does not. That's essentially what she's saying. They have to show that they can do college level work in math. And again, students who are not completely exempt must take a test prior to enrolling in college level work. And I'll give you the biggest frustration I've ever had, just as an example of, you know, how our hands are tied, and I know you understand how the state can tie your hands. We had a student who had not tested. He came during the last orientation, was advised into only developmental coursework based on his ACT scores. He took that coursework and passed it. The state told us he still has to test before we can enroll him in college level work. He's taken all the developmental he can, but he still had to test. That was a fun thing to say to the student.
How about those students that are rising juniors?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm assuming that the test that you're looking at
Is exit level.
Is the 10th grade, the 10th grade or the 11th grade?
Exit level is that. Now, let me clarify. And that's why my center advises the concurrent enrollment students, even though they're the top students, because the TSI rules for concurrent enrollment are even funkier than they are for regular students. We can use 10th grade tax only for concurrent enrollment students. And they're waived, they're not exempt, they're waived based on that score. We cannot ask them to provide any other proof until they graduate from high school. But when they graduate from high school, if their exit level tax does not exempt them, they have to test. Okay? Any other questions? Just jump. If you have any questions, just ask them, because we're very informal. So, okay. There are also additional exemptions based on ACT. Again, this is legislated. A 23 composite with a 19 on both English and math. SAT is a combined 1070 with a 500 on both verbal and math, and the ACT throws students more often than the ACT, because we'll have students who will get a 1070 but they don't have the 500, so they think that they're exempt, but they're not, because they still have to have the 500 on both of those subtests. These are the minimum passing scores set by the state. And these are the 4 state-approved tests. And again, these are the state minimum passing scores. So our THEA is 230 in reading, 230 in math, and 220 in writing. The English department has a higher score, and the math department has a higher score. So to test into college-level math, college algebra, they have to have a 260. And to get into college English, they have to have a 240. And I know you guys know this because we say it all the time, but if you have a student who does not have the ACT score to put them in college algebra, and they need to take a test, Accuplacer or THEA, to get in there, strongly encourage them to take THEA. And I'll lie and say that I didn't say this if you tell the math department I said this, but our math department requirement for Accuplacer is a little over the top. because it requires a 70 on college level math on Accuplacer, and college level math assesses higher level skills than algebraic skills. But that's how they set it, so that's what we have to go with. And it's very difficult to get a 70 on the college level math portion. Okay, so if they want to take a test to get into college level math, strongly encourage them to take THEA, even though it's not as convenient as Accuplacer. It's much, much, much easier to get the 260 than to get the 70 on college level math. Okay?
I have a question.
Yes.
In order, when students take contemporary math
Yes.
instead of college algebra, is it the same score, the 260?
Yes. The same prerequisites still apply. Yes. And the philosophy as well, because now we have the philosophy that will count as the math credit. Yes. That I talked to one of our students the other day, and he said it is eating his lunch. So don't let them think that the philosophy is easy. But for a person like me who's math phobic, but I love the logic stuff, it's perfect for a person like me. But it's still a very difficult course. Oh, yes.
Just since we're talking about math, anyone who's going into high math required fields, like engineering, okay, it is very important that students realize that if they're not ready for calculus, when they start, they get bottleneck after the first semester. So if there are students that you have that are looking at going into engineering, be sure that if they don't get high enough ACT of a 25, which allows them to enter at the same level they were in high school, that they retest or they CLEP to a point, or AP to the point that they're ready to start with their calculus. We find a lot of students who are going into engineering may come to us with the math, and they're going into intermediate algebra or even college algebra, and they go, okay, this could set you back almost a year. They look at us and they go, nobody ever told me that. So the more that you can help the students to understand those kinds of things when they're going into a high science, high math level area, there's higher requirements for when they start so that they don't get pushed back further. Okay?
And that's also true of students that plan to attend one of the flagship institutions. They really need to be calculus ready if they want to do that. Okay. Students are placed in developmental education until they meet college readiness standards. At our institution, there are 4 courses. English 1310 that they must take if they're not college ready in reading, English 1320 if they're not college ready in writing, and Math 1330 and 1334 depending on their score. If they're very bad, like me, in math, 1300 is where I would be till probably forever. So. And students are not allowed to enroll in upper division coursework until they meet state standards for college readiness. This piece is, the first bullet is state mandated. The second bullet is part of our institutional plan. We do now have the ability at the advisor discretion to say, you've done what you need to do, you've taken the course all the time, we're going to allow you to enroll in upper division courses even though you've not cleared in math, and it's always in math where that's the problem. But if the student has not done what they need to do and did not enroll in the course and just took the lab and kept thinking I'll retest, then my advisors will not allow them to do that because they need to comply completely for us to waive that rule for them. Okay, if they're deficient in math, they obviously cannot enroll in Math 1340 or higher, and the contemporary math and the philosophy course that counts for the math requirement. In reading, they cannot enroll in any of the sophomore level Englishes, history, political science, and general psychology. In writing, English 1301 or 1302.
What was that on the philosophy course?
That they still have to meet the same, they cannot enroll in that philosophy course, the math that meets the math core requirement if they've not cleared.
What philosophy course is that?
It is 1321. And there is, that's brand new. There is a core curriculum I saw that's included back with the concurrent enrollment. I think it may be that green sheet that has the 43-hour core on there. That sheet is written specifically for concurrent enrollment students. So there's some information on there that regular college student wouldn't need. Yeah, that's it. It's a light green. But it's on there, right? The philosophy 1321 under the math requirement? Yes. Okay. So that's our, and we'll talk about that a little more, but that's our 43-hour core that when Dennis talked about the core curriculum, that's what he's talking about. Okay. If I'm exempt from taking THEA, I will never have to test for THEA or Accuplacer or any other test. True or false? False. Very good. It was kind of a trick question, isn't it? Okay. If your students want to go into education, the state also mandates that every institution who teaches, who has an education major, must test those students to ensure that they meet certain requirements in reading, math, and writing. And those scores are available on our website. I think we took them out because it was kind of made this slide real busy. But just know that they will have, if they want to go into education, they will have to test at some point, even if they are completely exempt, because that's again one of the state requirements. And I think, okay, oh here they are right here. Reading 240, math 230, and writing 240. So and even if they go all the way through the developmental education, I had a student the other day in my office who just could not get a 230 on the math, and she had to go another route because she had tested and retested and retested. She'd gone all the way through the developmental education, and I promise you that would so be me. I'm so math phobic. I did not take any math for my undergraduate degree. Thank God I don't have to go. I mean, if I took the test right now, I mean, there's no way I could get a degree. And I really kind of think I did okay. So I kind of feel for these students that are required to take this math requirement when, that didn't exist when I went into school. And I think I'm okay. And if they take Accuplacer, these are the requirements. Reading of 82, math of 82 on the EA. And let me just clarify, the state-approved test on Accuplacer is the elementary algebra. That's the EA. Our math department uses the next step up, the college level math. But this is the requirement for the College of Education is on the elementary algebra. And then on writing, an 80 with a 5 over writing sample or any score with a writing sample of 6. Okay, and now we'll turn it over. Do you guys have any questions about TSI before I turn it over to Marilyn? And I'm probably going to jump in some too on the other stuff. So that's what we do.
Okay. Just to flip back in your booklet, they found the core curriculum in the concurrent enrollment. It would be good to look at that because I'd like to make a couple comments on that as we get started here. Mr. McMillan went over the fact that core curriculum is consistent among the different colleges and universities across the state, and we have to accept that somebody is core complete when they transfer into our institution. One thing that's important for you to know, if you have students who are coming directly into UT Pan Am, we recently reduced the number of credits in our core. Okay? So we reduced the number of credits, and that's what you have in your booklet right there. So it's important so that students know if they may take some courses at STC that do not fit in our core. Okay? If they complete their entire core curriculum, which is usually your basic coursework in English, history, math, we have music or art appreciation, those types of courses are pretty consistent from university to college. But there may be some core requirements are different from one college or university to another one. What we find in concurrent enrollment at times, or dual enrollment, students may take speech courses. And they take that, and they're not planning on completing their core at STC, and they're planning to come straight in to UTPA. Those speech credits do not go towards our core. Okay? So they need to be careful when they're taking concurrent enrollment and dual enrollment credits to make sure it's moving in the direction of the major that they want to go into. Okay? So it's very important when they're taking their concurrent enrollment classes or their dual enrollment classes that they're not just picking courses at random. And we're going to talk more about what's called the enrollment cap.
On the speech
Okay. No, speech was never, I mean, it hasn't been in the 48-hour core or the more recent core.
It was prior
In the 60? In the 60 core.
but when we went to 48, it went away.
So now they don't need it.
They don't need it for our core. So, and that's one of the courses that we see multiple times if they're coming straight into UTPA, that in a sense, you'll see how it may work against the student. Okay? So just to make you aware of that. Okay? You want to say something else?
That's, oh, sorry.
This is what
This
happens.
is,
when
yeah,
you
we're
have to
not
take-
accustomed to this. That was a really good question. It depends on when the student entered. Now, all of your students that are graduating now will go under the 43-hour core. But if they entered earlier, they could be under the 48-hour core. If they entered quite a while ago, they could be under the 60-hour core. So and all of that, you know, that I know y'all have the same thing because you phase in different curricula and it starts with the freshmen. So that's basically the same thing that we have.
We start with this one.
This one started this past fall. Right, and the modern language requirement is a big change, and that's really going to get some of our students, but she's going to talk more about that.
Okay. If you look on that green copy, you'll notice there's a section that's called Secondary Language Proficiency. Okay. If you have students who have taken at least 2 years of a modern language, okay, in high school, then they are not required to take additional coursework in a modern language at UTPA. If they took it in the same area, we do have students sometimes that come and they have one in one area and one in another. They might have taken Spanish and French, okay? Just so that they're aware that if they do that, they will not need it.
For dual though, or just Spanish?
For,
Whatever language, for dual credit though.
okay, I'll show you how dual credit will impact them.
No, but it does not have to be dual credit.
No, it doesn't have to be two.
As long as they took two, okay.
As long as they took 2 years of high school Spanish or English, or French, anything other than English. Okay? Let's look at this I'm seeing. Okay? We'll talk more about this, how it relates to some of the other rules that are in place because of the Texas Coordinating Board. Yes.
I have a question on that, second language proficiency.
Mm-hmm.
So now they don't have to take the AP Spanish exam to get college credit?
Okay, very good question. Just to clarify, the second language proficiency, a lot of students like to take that for the AP, because they get college credit, and if they're interested in going into a Spanish field or interested in having Spanish as a minor, they can do that. It won't count against them later, okay? But if they take dual enrollment Spanish courses, you'll see a little bit later how that might impact them negatively because it may not be on their degree plan. Okay? So if they're taking high school Spanish 2 years, they'll meet the requirement. Okay? Otherwise, if they don't meet that requirement by taking high school Spanish, they'll need to meet the requirement by taking AP tests or CLEP out, or else they will need to take 2 semesters of a second language while in college. Okay, at UTPA. It's not part of the core, it's a university requirement. Okay, it's a graduation requirement. So sometimes students may just come in and think, okay, I'm fine, and then it might not hit them until they get closer to graduation.
So I think, for example, a dual enrollment Spanish, let's say the regular Spanish is a dual enrollment course.
Okay.
So they would need the 2 classes, then they take it, that's part of their requirement.
That's
Even
part.
though they're not majoring or minoring in Spanish.
Right, but I'll tell you in just a minute how it's going to impact them, okay? Because it'll come in on this excess hours, okay? So, students that started the first time fall 2006 and later are under the 30 excess hour rule, okay? And within that, if they go more than 30 credits outside of their degree plan, the semester after they exceed that, they get an excess hour fee. Okay? And
Higher than what, Mr. McMillan?
it's $125, not $100.
And that's my husband, so I'll kill him later.
We're gonna hold them to it.
Right.
It's recorded.
Mm-hmm. The part that we need to make sure that students understand, and this is where you can be very helpful at the high school level. If they take courses, this means 30 credits. It's like a 30 credit cushion. So if you think of 3-hour courses, that's only 10 classes that they take, either that are not on their degree plan, or they drop, or they repeat. So it doesn't give them a lot of wiggle room. So if they are taking dual enrollment Spanish classes, and it is not on their degree plan, whoops, there goes 6 credits off of their 30 hours. Yeah, if they minor in Spanish, it'll go towards the minor. Mm-hmm. Did you want to say something?
And there are a lot of things. Our URAP office works really diligently with these students to work out some way that they don't have to pay the excess hours tuition. But there are a number of things they can do if they go over that. But I want to say one thing about the dual credit. And Liz is here from STC. The community colleges are not as in tune with this as universities, because rarely does it impact them. I mean, there is nothing like it at the community college level. So it's not on their radar like it is on ours. So it's up to you guys to make sure that the student understands, if they're taking dual credit, this may come back to bite them. Because some of our staff were talking to our UNIV course, which is our Learning Frameworks course, and the students were shocked about the excess hours. And they said, well, nobody ever told us that. And I sent the slide back to the UNIV instructor and said, here it is. Now, we all know that there are many, many things we tell students over and over and over again, and they go, nobody ever told me. So, but you guys can really help your students if you just let them know that this is out there, and those things can really come back to bite them.
I have another question. I'm sorry for all these questions.
No, that's
No,
good.
that's good.
If a student goes to STC and gets an associate degree, part of the associate degree is a speech credit.
Mm-hmm.
So when they transfer those hours to UTPA to continue to get their bachelor's degree, is that going to hurt them going with an associate?
Well, if they have the associate's degree, remember that's part of the core at STC. So we take the whole core. So their credits come with the core. So we don't require them to take other coursework that we may have in our core. The only thing that we would require is if there's a prerequisite for an upper level course.
So what I'm saying is that each 3 hours is not going to hurt them because they're coming with an associate degree.
Right. It won't hurt them as long as they complete the core there.
Well, but
Well, with the associate degree,
it can hurt them
If they're
with enrollment cap.
it can, because now the STC core is
Well, we're still at 45 hours.
45 hours. So there's 2 credits.
And we always tell students that they do the entire core at STC.
Do you want to stand up and
Oh, yeah.
just to get it on tape?
Good morning. My name is Liz Diaz. I'm one of the counselors at South Texas College, and I work closely with Marilyn, with everybody here at Pan Am in terms of making sure students get the right information. Our students who finish the core at STC, this transfers as a block, as long as it has core complete on the transcript. And we do have speech as one of our requirements. So it comes out in all the degree plans for our associate degrees. When it transfers over here, and that's where there's these questions about the hours, it's supposed to take the place of the core at Pan Am on the degree plan there. But you're right, the prerequisites or other things like that. It might make a difference. So it's very important for students. I work closely with students to let them know, here's the associate requirements for our college, but here's the degree plan for Pan Am. And with the new changes, we've been showing them the website, from the AIM Center in terms of looking up the different degree plans. Because a lot of students are not aware of, I didn't know I need this, or I didn't know I needed those kind of classes based on what they want to major in. But we're trying to work closely together to get better information out to students.
And one of the things that when they went to El Paso, I think it was last week, one of the things we're working on with STC is having kind of joint degree programs, so that they because that's what UTEP and El Paso Community College have. So we're working on that, where it would be, it would just be, they just transfer right in and just start with their other courses. But it's just, and honestly, I just have to say, it's all about money. Our institution and STC is completely about lifelong learning. Unfortunately, the state legislature is not about lifelong learning. They're about saving money. So all these things that they put in place are to save the state money. And what it's doing is, putting an unfair burden on our students. And the best way, as she goes through these, the best way for you to know if something counts towards enrollment cap or three-peat or any of those, if it's funded by the state, it counts. So if it's AP, doesn't count.
Oh, it doesn't count for
AP does not count towards enrollment cap or three-peat or any of those because it was never funded by the state. So that's the way to know if it's going to count or not count. If it was funded by the state, it's going to count. Okay?
And CLEP does not count either. Okay? CLEP doesn't count either, but concurrent enrollment courses will count towards the enrollment cap. The other thing that we've seen a couple cases where students took an art drawing class and they never intended to major in art. So that art drawing class is going towards this 30-hour cushion. So that students are aware that these extra classes, see, the difficulty is it takes away some of the exploration that is needed for our students. But at the same time, as long as they're aware and if they know that this is taking credits away from that cushion, then they have the choice. And that's what we're about, making sure students are informed so that they have the choice and they make that realizing that when they get into their senior year, what happens is this hits them in their senior year. Okay? Once the first term that they're past that limit, that 30 credit limit, that's when they're hit with the fee. Okay? Let me give you an example. If they're taking 12 credits, that first term past their senior year, 12 credits is $1,500 extra above fees and tuition. Many times what happens too is students, when they get to this point, they're running out of financial aid if they're still on it. Okay? So the cap, make sure that you ask this at the financial aid presentation. The cap for financial aid is 180 credits. Okay? So if you look at many of our degree plans, what's happened recently, we've also been asked to reduce the credits in all of our degree plans by the state to be as close to 120 credits as possible. That's taken out a lot of those electives that students could put those extra classes in. They're very streamlined now. So that's why sometimes if they would have taken some classes during high school for concurrent or dual enrollment, they said, okay, we can use that as an elective. Now that has changed, and many times the classes they took are electives, but they're not advanced electives. They're not junior, senior electives, which is being required on our degree plans. Okay? So there's a lot of things that are coming to play here. Okay? So key things to make sure that students think about is what do they want to major in, what career do they want to go into, and make sure that they realize that the grades they get on those courses are going on their college transcript. We have a lot of kids that come in that students that want to go into pre-med, want to go into very competitive programs, and they had B's and C's on their concurrent enrollment course, and they go, you mean because I got that B or C, either I need to retake it, which uses up some of that coursework for the enrollment cap, or else I have to find other ways to keep improving my grade point average. So many times that's an important thing to realize. Also with dual enrollment and concurrent enrollment courses, they count to the enrollment cap, like we said, so we need to make sure that students pick those courses wisely. The other thing with concurrent enrollment courses, please have students understand that if they're going into a high-level science or math or some particular area and they're not taking those courses in their concurrent enrollment courses, what happens is it puts their schedule off balance when they come in. If somebody's going into pre-med but they didn't take both biology and chemistry for concurrent enrollment classes, when they come in and they took all their other core classes, then they're stuck with all science courses. They don't have anything to balance out all those labs they're in. So the balance of the courses that they're taking is very important for concurrent enrollment. Okay? Any questions on that? Okay. Okay. Here's a question for you. A student takes a presentational speech, concurrent, or dual enrollment course, UTPA, the COM 1303, which is also the STC, speech 1315, and receives a D. Which of the following statements are true? Okay? The course counts towards the student's major requirements. Depends. Okay, it depends on what they're going into. Okay, so for one thing, if they got the associate's degree and they completed the core at STC, that's part of the core and it comes over as the whole core. The other thing, if they're going into a communications major or if they're going into some of the other majors that require the speech, it will go towards the major and so won't count towards the enrollment cap. Okay? Second question. The course counts towards the enrollment cap. I just answered that one. Okay? It's true because every course they take counts towards the enrollment cap. Now, whether it goes out of that cushion depends on if it's actually on their major or not.
Well, and also if they take it at a private institution or out of state, again, it goes back to, was it funded by the state of Texas? And the coordinating board tells us who is under enrollment cap based on all of the coursework that they've taken at any public institution. And then they say, you've got to go out and tell the student that they're over excess hours. So
another question. So there's really no room for electives? Like, you know, when you were in college, I know there was electives and you could count your Spanish or your speech in as electives.
Very little. Now, what happens though, it happens in the sense of if they're interested in going into a minor, sometimes those courses help because they're often prerequisites for other courses that are upper level courses. But yeah, the electives they have to be very careful, and so that's why the more that we can help you with that, we'll be happy to do that. So anything that is taken outside of the state though, or at a private college or university does not go towards enrollment cap, just to clarify that. Last question. The course grade is calculated into the student's cumulative GPA. True or false? Ha. It depends. This is tricky. We just wanted to put this in here to let you know that UTPA is moving towards what's called a native GPA. Okay? And all the details have not been worked out with that yet. But with that native GPA, those courses that are taking at another college or community college or university are listed on our system as transfer credit, and they do not come into our cumulative GPA once they go into that system. Okay? So there's a lot of details that are going to need to be worked out on that, but this is just to let you know that native GPA is coming in.
So it counts for credit, but not for GPA.
It'll count for credit. It'll count to meet requirements, but it will not count towards their cumulative GPA. Okay?
which is as it should be, by the way.
Okay. I think Mr. McMillan went over the three-peat rule. Were there any questions on three-peat rule?
The only thing about three-peat is this one is only at our institution. And I don't know why they do that, because some of them are all of their college career. This one is at only one institution. So if they take it 6 times at STC, oh, thanks, and then they come and take it again at UTPA, it does not count towards our three-peat. Okay? And I'll tell you, the one thing that he didn't put, and I'm not sure, oh, it is on here, that the developmental coursework is any combination of 18 hours. So it's not just 3 courses in developmental. It's any combination of 18 hours. But I've seen, Marilyn and I get the list of students who fall under three-peat, and I've seen students who have taken Math 1300 10 times and Math 1334 10 times and still have not, gone into college algebra. And who would that be? Me. Yeah.
Okay, so with that, three-peat is institutionally based, whereas enrollment cap is all universities throughout and colleges throughout the state.
So
Just to know the difference.
Twice, let's say college algebra at STC, and they don't pass, then they get enrolled in UTPA and they take it there, it doesn't count for the three-peat.
Right. So, does anybody need to have that repeated, that question? Okay. But remember, if they take college algebra at STC, it may not count towards their cumulative GPA after they get that going. Okay? Okay, 6-course drop rule. Any questions on that? Basically, this started for the first time fall of 2007. If you have I don't know if you'd have any concurrent enrollment students that started before fall of 2007. By now, they're probably gone. Okay, so from the fall of 2007 on, those that started for the first time now have to be worried about the 6-course drop rule. Any students that were enrolled in concurrent or actually at a state college or university before that time don't have to worry about the 6-course drop rule.
And we go over this with the concurrent enrollment students when they come in, three-peat, enrollment cap, all of that. But they're not in a mindset to hear that. No student enrolling for their first college course is thinking, I think I may drop this course and, maybe I may, change my major 6 times. So you guys can really help us by reinforcing that with your students because they just, it's just not on their radar when they're a junior in high school taking a college level course. So then they come in and they're like, well, nobody ever told me that. Because they're just not thinking along those lines. So if you can reinforce that, that really does help. And this 6-course drop is really the biggest bunch of garbage I've ever seen in my life, honestly. But it is what it is, and we still have to abide by it. But again, it's all about money.
This is correct, though, right? The concurrent enrollment doesn't go towards the 6.
That's right. Concurrent enrollment does not count towards 6 drop or developmental. And again, there are some other courses that are exempted from that. And we are able to write our own rules, and I'll tell you, my other hat is counseling and psychological services. We have a lot of students who are not functioning at a level where they can continue in a full course load, but they need therapy, and they will drop down to 1 course so they can continue in therapy with my clinical staff, because if they're not enrolled, we can't see them. And this will get those students. And I have argued and argued and argued about that, because if they completely withdraw, it doesn't count against them. But if they completely withdraw, they can't continue in therapy with my staff. So can you tell, I really hate this one.
Okay, a question with the 6-course drop rule. Oh, that'll be coming up in a little bit, I guess. The second language proficiency, we talked some about this. And the ways that you can meet that are through 2 years of high school, second language coursework, the exams, either AP CLEP or International Baccalaureate, or else college credit. Okay? And now the difference too, just to let you know, before students might say, oh, but I thought I only needed to take 1 class at UTPA for modern language. Well, because of this rule, if they don't meet that requirement before they come in, they'll have to take 2 modern language courses. Okay? Okay.
On your core, where you have like philosophy and modern classical language, that's literature, that's not...
Modern classical language is not a modern language. It's more of looking at critical thinking skills, philosophy. It's different. Okay? This question, if a student took 1 year of Spanish and 1 year of French in high school, will the student be required to take modern language coursework at UTPA? Okay. You already said yes. So that brings up the 2 semesters. Okay? Okay. If you have, are there any other questions before, how much time do we have?
About 2 minutes.
Okay. Any other questions that this has?
Requirement that you have at UTPA, is that in the state of Texas or just at UTPA?
Many state institutions have that type of language proficiency. Not all.
I'm thinking if they take it here and they have to take those 2 in college, and then they transfer somewhere else, is that going to come for their excess?
It depends on where they're going to. Because the other thing students need to be aware of, we have a lot of students that come in and say, I'm only here for a year, I want to transfer someplace else. They need to know where they want to transfer and look at that requirements. Because in a year's time, they probably won't be core complete with us. Okay? So that's something students need to know. If they're saying, I'm going to be switching, I need to know where I'm going, or else we can't assist them, but it's like their own research. And many of the institutions in Texas do have this. We're one of the latter ones to take this on. And we said, many of our students are proficient already in Spanish, so why are we making this additional requirement? So that's where it came from. Okay? If there are no more questions, thank you very much. I hope this has been helpful for you.